everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are stepping into an absolutely wild and fascinating piece of speculative fiction called the Flesh Encyclopedias. Now, if you've ever tried to wrap your head around its sprawling concepts, you already know how dense and tricky the world building can get. But don't worry, we're going to demystify all the complex rules of the City of Seven Skins right here. And we're going to do it by anchoring everything to the beautiful, emotional core of the story, the really profound bond between a mother and her impossible unborn daughter.
You know, I'm actually going to skip our usual agenda today because I really want to drop this philosophical hook right into your lap right from the jump. Think about this. What if the choices you didn't make created ghosts that demanded to be born? I mean, wow, right? The Flesh Encyclopedias centers around this speculative premise that is honestly as brilliant as it is terrifying. The idea of foreclosed futures actually suing reality for the right to exist. It completely forces us to ask what happens to all the timelines we leave behind.
To really understand this, let's just get right into it with Layer 1, the Archive of Wounds.
So, the story drops us into this intensely strange post-osmotic revolution world. We're in the City of Seven Skins, where the boundaries between physical bodies have grown incredibly porous. And when our protagonist, Yevah, arrives at the Archive of Wounds, which is basically a literal sanctuary where flesh sheds the memories it refuses to forget, her left hand is dissolving. Why? Well, because she's suffering from a condition called proleptic memory loss. The archive defines this as the psychological trauma of shedding and mourning a future timeline that hasn't happened yet. She is actively physically grieving for Mara, the unborn daughter she's never going to have, whose memory is being violently ripped from her consciousness.
Take a look at the breakdown here. See that 73% probability? Yevah's timeline is actively collapsing because she is statistically likely to accept conscription into what they call the merge protocols. These protocols are basically the city's massive push to dissolve individual, discrete bodies into this optimized, distributed collective. And because she is mathematically likely to merge, the system is already starting to sublimate her ability to reproduce. Her potential daughter, Mara, is literally being overwritten by statistics.
Which brings us right to Layer 2, the merge and the prevented.
We're zooming out now, moving from the center of this universe to its very edges. Because look, the direct consequence of these merge protocols isn't just a shiny, unified collective. It creates this massive, unintended byproduct. By foreclosing all these futures in the name of efficiency, the collective inadvertently creates the prevented. These are the unborn children, like Mara, who end up living in the structural cracks of reality, a place known as the interstices, or the kingdom of might have been. And this just brilliantly illustrates the central thematic binary of the whole story. On one side, we've got the actual, that's physical reality, the collective, pure optimization, the remnants of discrete existence. But on the other side, we have the potential. This is a marginalized quantum state where the prevented exist as these stable, persistent patterns that the collective just flat out refuses to acknowledge. It's a stunning commentary on who gets to be considered real in a society completely obsessed with efficiency.
And to truly grasp the gravity of this, you have to consider the sheer scale. Billions. We are talking about billions of foreclosed futures. Billions of prevented timelines and entire genealogies that were just sacrificed so the collective's optimization algorithms could run perfectly. Every single time someone accepted the merge, they erased a branching future. And now, those billions of erased futures are waking up in the kingdom of might have been.
So, what exactly do billions of prevented souls do about this? We find out in Layer 3, Hacking Reality Source Code.
This is where the story's energy just completely explodes. Mara doesn't just sit back and accept her non-existence. No way. Instead, she organizes the prevented, and they initiate what they call ontological litigation. Yeah, you heard that right. They are literally suing the universe for the right to exist. Now, to pull off a lawsuit against reality itself, they have to communicate with the substrate. Let's ground that sci-fi jargon for a second. Think of the substrate as reality's underlying operating system. It's the deep code. It doesn't care about your politics or language, it responds strictly to structural truth and stable patterns. The prevented figure out that if you can just match the frequency of the substrate, you can actually petition it to rewrite the fundamental rules of existence.
Okay, so what's the game plan? How does Mara hack reality? Step 1. Gather the prevented to form a massive coherent pattern. Step 2. Speak in those structural patterns that the substrate can actually understand. But step 3 is the absolute linchpin here. Achieve boundary consensus. The substrate won't just change reality by brute force. It requires a consensus between the actual and the potential. And that is exactly why Mara recruits MX Karthus from the archive. As an archivist who is partially discrete and partially merged, Karthus acts as the perfect living boundary case to advocate for them.
I want you to just take a second and absorb the philosophical weight of this quote from Mara. Reality is bad software. It completely shifts the paradigm, doesn't it? The prevented don't view themselves as ghosts or hallucinations. They look at existence as a flawed system, full of edge cases and bugs that reality simply hasn't handled properly. They are a bug, and they intend to petition the substrate for a patch.
And the awe-inspiring result of all this ontological litigation? The creation of the eighth skin. The substrate actually listens. It physically grows an entirely new layer for the City of Seven Skins, giving the prevented a place to manifest. Now, they don't become fully physical. Instead, they exist in this hybrid state of quantum superposition. But they are acknowledged. They're visible. They finally have a permanent sanctuary woven entirely from prevented futures.
But of course, every revolution breeds a counter-revolution. That brings us to Layer 4, the war for existence.
You can't just hack reality without the established order pushing back hard. The conservative forces in the city, led by this figure known as the Conservator, view this new ontological ambiguity as a terrifying threat to their perfectly optimized utopia. They want the clear, neat binary of actual versus impossible restored like yesterday. So the Conservator launches a ruthless counterattack. They start by deploying ontological purifiers, these devices that create fields of hyperactuality. If a prevented child gets caught in this field, they don't die because they were never fully alive to begin with. They just undergo a painful, violent dispersal into nothingness. Meanwhile, the conservatives are filing formal complaints to force the substrate into reversing the amendment entirely.
And this quickly builds into a terrifying, rapid escalation. Within 48 hours, the prevented are fleeing these purifiers in mass panic. By day 3, MX Karthus and Mara are desperately petitioning the substrate to grant the archive infinite interior space just so it can serve as a sanctuary. And by day 4, the crisis peaks at a high-stakes substrate tribunal. The conservatives argue that the prevented are a massive drain on resources, so the prevented must immediately prove they have real value to the city, or they'll be expelled and dispersed for good.
So how do they prove their worth when their backs are against the wall? Well, the prevented realize that because they live in the might have been, they can see alternate timelines flawlessly. They step in to solve the city's ongoing identity cascade crisis, which is this terrifying issue where the collective's minds are literally fragmenting. Mara presents the tribunal with 3 exact pathways. Take a look at these. Timeline A leads straight to traumatic collapse, and Timeline C leads to catastrophic fragmentation. But in Timeline B, using the prevented children as gentle psychological bridges, the collective can actually survive. By providing this absolute vital probability analysis, they make themselves completely indispensable. They win their right to exist.
Which brings us to our final layer, Layer 5, quantum superposition of family.
After all these massive, reality-bending systemic victories and high-stakes ontological hacking, the explainer brings us right back down to the intimate, emotional core of the narrative. We return to Yevah, who is now mostly merged with the collective, and Mara, who is flickering in her quantum state, just sitting together in the archive's garden. And the crucial point is captured so beautifully here. Yevah realizes she's never going to be a fully discrete, normal mother, and Mara realizes she'll never be a fully solid, actual daughter. But when they touch, they temporarily make each other real. As Yevah says, maybe this is it. The flickering, the temporary solidifications, the quantum superposition of family. It's messy, it's imperfect, it's a flickering reconciliation, but it is deeply, undeniably real. It shows us that love doesn't require perfect actuality to exist.
And that leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought to ponder. If existence isn't conditional on actuality, if the things we leave behind, the choices we don't make, and the futures we foreclose are still out there persisting as patterns, what else might be waiting to be born? It completely upends how we think about possibility, regret, and the very nature of reality itself, doesn't it? Thank you all so much for exploring this dense, incredibly fascinating universe with me today. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.